Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to develop a fun battleship game. Let me give you a quick overview about Battleship in case you're unfamiliar with it. It is a two-player game. Each player gets their own grid where they'll be placing ship locations. The objective of the game is to find opponent ship locations in order to destroy the ships. We'll be finding opponent ship locations by randomly guessing on their grid. We are going to develop an MVP version of the Battleship game. What does the term MVP stand for? It is minimum viable product. It is a famous term in the world of startup. It just refers to the fact that we'll be developing minimalistic features of the product in order to demo it. So what are the minimalistic features of our battleship game? We are going to have only one ship, which is of length 1. The position of the ship is going to be fixed. We are only going to allow one user guess. The top left position of the grid is going to be 0, 0. The horizontal dimension is going to be x and the vertical dimension is going to be y. We are going to display 0 to the user if the guess is incorrect and 1 to the user if the guess is correct. Let me switch to idle editor and I'll be clicking on file, new file. Let's save this program as battleship.py. The naive way of displaying the battleship grid would be for you to copy a single line of grid dots and paste it into your program and use print function call to display single line of the grid. You can then copy paste this function call a given number of times so that you're able to produce the desired grid here. Let me run the current version of the program. Notice that we are able to produce the grid here. So what is wrong with this naive version of displaying the grid? We are hard coding the entire grid. Let's define variables for width and height instead. So I'm going to say width equal to 10 and height equal to 8. So we are going to be producing an 8 cross 10 grid. How can we display a single row of the grid without hard coding? Recall that you can replicate a string dot a given number of times by multiplying that with an integer. How many dots do we need for a given row? That's going to be given by the width dimension, correct? So I'm going to multiply dot, which is a string here, by width. Let me save the program and I'm going to be running the program. Notice that I'm testing my program incrementally. That is going to be my recommendation for all of you. It is always best practice for you to write a couple of lines of code and test it immediately rather than write tens of lines of code and then test your program altogether. If you have any issues once you finish typing a lengthy program, it's going to be difficult for you to debug. If you keep going through incremental coding, you can feel assured that whatever you've tested so far works correctly. Looks like we are able to display a single line of grid points here. How can we display the entire grid? So one line can be displayed when we multiply dot by width. So if we want to display the entire grid, we'll have to multiply that by height, correct? So let's try to directly multiply by height and we'll see what is wrong with this version shortly. Looks like we are able to display the grid points, but the problem here is that all the points are showing up in a single line. So we want to add a new line in between every row here. So when we multiply dot by width, that's giving us a single row. And when we take that expression and multiply that by height, that's going to give us all the rows. After every row, we want to add a new line. So I need to be careful to add parentheses around this part of the expression here. Why is that needed? That's because the multiplication sign has a higher precedence than the plus sign here. So if you don't have the parentheses, then the multiplication operator will be applied before the addition operator here. So recall that we need to simplify any expression within the parentheses first. So that's what we are going to do here. I'm going to save the current version and let's run the program. Looks like we are getting an 8 cross 10 grid here. What we are going to do now is we are going to worry about how to decompose the problem into three smaller subproblems here. So you need to display some part of the grid above the guess line. Then you need to display the guess line itself. Then you need to display the part of the grid below the guess line. So the first thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to define the XY location for the ship. Let me define variables called ship X and ship Y, and I'm going to assign the values of 7 and 3 into ship underscore X and ship underscore Y. I want another couple of variables to keep track of the user guess. So I'm going to define guess underscore X and guess underscore Y. Eventually, we want to get user input for these two variables. For now, I don't want to do that because that will slow me down with respect to development of my program. Every time when you test your program, if you have to type in the user input, that's going to considerably slow you. So for now, I'm going to write a comment saying this is set to do, and I'll write the similar comment for guess underscore y variable as well. Let's hardcode guess underscore x as 5 and guess underscore y as 4 for now. Now that we have the required variables, let's go back to our thought process about decomposing the problem into three sub-problems, which would be dealing with the grid above the guess line, dealing with the guess line, and dealing with the grid below the guess line. So I'm going to type out three steps here. Step 1 is going to deal with rows before guess, and step 2 is going to deal with the guess row itself, and step 3 is going to deal with rows after the guess. Let me cut and paste the grid line which we had previously. How do we have to change the height factor here in order to make sure that we are only displaying the number of rows above the guess line? Keep in mind that the vertical dimension here is y and the horizontal dimension here is x. So vertical dimension determines which row we are talking about. So guess underscore y is going to be the dimension which you'll have to put in here. Why are we using guess underscore y instead of saying guess underscore y minus 1 in order to remove the guess line? That's because recall that our top left position in the grid is 0, 0. So what we are going to do now is let's save this file and let's run the program to check whether we're able to display parts of the grid above the guess line. So guess y is currently 4. So that means that the user guesses in fifth line. So there should be 4 rows that get displayed right now. Looks like we are getting 4 rows that get displayed here. How can we check corner cases here? Let's try to change guess y to 0, and that should display 0 lines for step 1 here, which seems to be the case. What if we change guess y to 1? That should display 1 line before the guess line, which is correct. What if we change guess underscore y to guess underscore y minus 1 here. How can we determine whether this works or not? Let's try with the input for guess underscore y as 0, and we'll run the program. Looks like that is working. What if I change guess underscore y as 1 and I run the program here? That is also giving me the same output. So you need to define your grid top left location correctly. Since we have clearly defined that to be 0, 0, we need to use guess underscore y here. So let me go back to the previous version of guess underscore y, and I'm going to run the program one time really quickly here. Looks like we are able to deal with part of the grid above the guess row. So let's try to replicate that code for part of the grid below the guess row here. You need to skip the number of rows which are in the guess row and the above part in step 1. So the entire grid's height is given by height. So we need to do height minus guess underscore y, because we have already printed guess underscore y rows, and we also want to subtract the actual guess row which will be printed in step 2 here. So I'm going to save the program and let's try to run it one more time. Let's check how many rows are being printed after the guess line here. Above we are getting 4 rows. Guess is in the 5th row because guess underscore y is 4. And then you have row 6, row 7, row 8, which seems to be correct because we are supposed to have a 8 cross 10 grid here. All right, so how do we deal with the guess row here? That's sort of simple because we want to replicate whatever we have done for the grid within the row, correct? You need to print the dots before the guess location and the dots after the guess location. So let's try to replicate the same logic here. So I'm first going to print dots by multiplying that by guess underscore x here, which determines what is the x location for the guess. And then after that, for now, I'm just going to display x for the guess position itself. Then how many dots do we have to print after the actual guess location? That would be width minus guess underscore x minus 1, correct? I am simply replicating whatever math expression we came up with for this part of the grid over here. Let me save the program and I'll try to run it. Let's count the number of points before the guess location. That's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That seems to be correct because guess underscore x is 5. So the guess itself is going to be in 6th column. After that, you get x for the 6th column. Then you get 7, 8, 9, 10. One row is supposed to contain 10 entries for the grid points. So looks like we are getting the correct output here. There is one problem though. We are getting the output split across multiple lines, right? Let's fix that. Recall that you can configure the end uh, parameters value by passing named keyword argument. So I'm going to redefine the end here to take in empty space. Instead of printing new line, it will not print the new line when the print function is being called. And we need to repeat the same for the next print function call as well. We want to retain the new line after the third print function call because the row itself is over. Notice that we are getting an additional new line here above the guess line. That is coming from the fact that we add in new line after every row and you get another new line from the end configuration. So let's try to get rid of the new line from the end. named keyword argument here by redefining that to an empty value. I'm going to save the program and run it. Let's see if we get the proper grid. Looks like we are getting 8 cross 10 grid with the correct guess location, which is displayed by X for now. What do we want to do with the guess location? We want to display 0 or 1, correct? So let's write a simple computation in order to determine what to display there. First of all, we need to compare guess X with ship X, guess Y with ship Y, correct? So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to say guess underscore X should be equal to ship underscore X, and guess underscore Y should be equal to ship underscore Y. And this is going to give us a Boolean value, correct? Because we are comparing two integers here, and then we are using the AND operator to compare the result of those two comparisons. So I'm going to capture that into a variable called symbol, and for now let me just display symbol here. Let's go ahead and run the program, and this time we are going to try out a few test cases. Right now we are getting false. That is correct because the user guess is 5 and 4. If we change the user guess to 7 and 3, we should get a value of true. Let's test that. One thing which I want to bring your attention to here is that we need to use the AND operator here. If by mistake we had used an OR operator, how can you cover test cases to make sure that you're able to uh, find that bug and fix it? Let's try changing guess Y to 4, and let's keep guess X to 7 here. So with the current version, we are going to get false. I'm going to soon change the AND condition to OR. When we change that to OR, if I run the program, right now it will produce true because you're having an OR here. As soon as your guess X, which is the guess row, and the ship X, which is the ship location row, are the same, then you decide that, okay, you've found the correct location. But that's not correct. Both the X and Y here should match. So I'm going to go back to the previous version. Recall that you can typecast a Boolean value into an integer very easily by saying int of that variable name. So let me save the current version of the program and let's try to run it. Notice that we are getting 0 now, which is expected because we have guess X and Y as 7 and 0 here. So I'm going to get rid of the X display here. Instead, I'm going to display the integer version of the symbol here. So I'll have to convert the integer version of the symbol into a string in order to display using the print function call. Actually, let's try just the integer version of the symbol, and if we get an error, we can deal with it. So I'm going to go ahead and save the current version of the program, and let me run it really quickly. Looks like we are able to display it without issues. Let's try with the guess being the same as the ship location. Looks like we are getting 1 here. That will be it for today's lecture. Please make sure to go through all of this code and try out writing the code on your own.